Welcome to Moonlit Diary. Thank you for being here and for choosing yourself tonight. This space was created for women who are tired of shrinking, tired of waiting, tired of loving harder than they are loved back. Moonlit Diary stands for women's empowerment, emotional intelligence, self-respect, and healing. Here we believe that no woman was born to beg for clarity, chase consistency, or lose herself for love. Thank you for giving your time to your healing and for honoring your worth. Tonight, we are going to slow down and look at a story most of us were taught to see as romantic. A story we watched long before we had language for emotional safety, boundaries, or self-respect. A story that quietly shaped how many women learned to interpret love. The film we are analyzing today is Beauty and the Beast. Before anything extraordinary happens, before castles and curses enter the picture, we meet Belle in a very ordinary place. She lives in a small provincial town surrounded by routines that repeat themselves every day in almost the same way. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone fits into the same rhythm. Belle doesn't. From the very beginning, she moves through the village slightly out of step, carrying a book with her as she walks. She is there in body, but her mind is somewhere else. In other worlds, other lives, other possibilities. Reading is not just something she enjoys. It is where she feels most alive. The stories she reads are larger than the life around her. They are filled with meaning, depth, adventure, emotion, things she does not find reflected back to her in the village. And slowly, without ever naming it, Belle becomes someone who lives inwardly. She is kind, intelligent, curious, and emotionally open. But there is no one around her who truly meets her there. No one who mirrors her inner world. No one who really sees her. This creates a quiet loneliness. Not the kind that looks dramatic from the outside, but the kind where you learn to keep your inner life to yourself. When Belle sings about wanting more than this provincial life, it sounds on the surface like a wish for adventure, but underneath it is something softer and deeper. She wants resonance. She wants a life that feels emotionally expansive. She wants to be understood. At home, Belle lives alone with her father. There is no mother in her life. She is never mentioned, never explained. She is simply absent. What we do see is a close, affectionate bond between Belle and her father. They care deeply for one another. Belle worries about him, looks after him, and stands by him when the rest of the village does not take him seriously. Their world is small and intimate, quiet, centered around loyalty and care. Outside of this home, the village offers Belle one very clear option: Gaston. He is admired by everyone, confident, loud, certain of his place in the world, and he wants Belle openly, insistently, without doubt. But Belle feels nothing, not because she is cold or unreachable, but because Gaston never truly sees her. He talks over her, dismisses her interests, mocks the very things that make her who she is. What Gaston offers is not partnership, but possession. And Belle recognizes that instinctively. She is not drawn to being admired if it means being reduced. She is not impressed by attention that erases her inner world. So, before the story ever becomes magical, before love is framed as transformation, we already know something important about Belle. She is someone who feels unseen, someone who lives largely inside herself, someone whose world is small, but whose inner life is vast. And it is from this place, quiet, loyal, emotionally rich, that the rest of the story unfolds. After leaving the village, Belle's father makes his way through the forest, as he has done many times before. But this time, he loses his direction. The road disappears beneath the snow, the light fades, and eventually, he stumbles upon a castle hidden far away from the world he knows. He enters looking for shelter. What he finds instead is the beast. Once a prince, the beast was cursed years ago for his cruelty and lack of compassion. The curse transformed not only his body, but his life, sealing him inside the castle, cutting him off from the world, waiting for something he does not fully understand yet. When Maurice is discovered inside the castle, he is taken prisoner. Back in the village, Belle senses something is wrong. She follows her father's path into the forest, driven by worry rather than courage, and eventually arrives at the same castle. When she sees her father locked away, there is no long deliberation. She makes a choice. Belle offers herself in exchange for his freedom. The decision is immediate, instinctive, rooted in loyalty and love. Her father is released and sent home. Belle stays behind. With that moment, her life splits into before and after. She does not enter the castle as a visitor. She enters it as someone who has given herself up. And this choice, made quietly, without drama, becomes the foundation for everything that follows. When Belle arrives at the castle, the shift is quiet but absolute. There is no long conversation, no space to reconsider. She has taken her father's place, and the door closes behind her. At first, her world becomes very small. She is locked away in a single room, surrounded by stone walls and silence, while the castle stretches endlessly beyond her reach. The space is vast, but her freedom is not. This is important to remember because everything that follows grows out of this moment. Time passes, and slowly, the sharpness of the beast's anger begins to dull. Not suddenly, and not consistently, but in fragments. One day, Belle is allowed to leave her room. She walks through long corridors, up winding staircases, past doors she had only imagined before. The castle opens itself to her piece by piece. It feels like generosity, like kindness, and to her body it is. Because when confinement is your starting point, any widening of space feels like relief. She does not experience this as freedom. She experiences it as being spared, and relief has a way of softening fear. Not long after, Belle sees her chance and does what most of us would do. She tries to leave. She rides into the forest, determined to find her way home. But the night closes in quickly. The path disappears beneath the snow, and before she can orient herself, she is surrounded. The wolves come out of the darkness suddenly, fast and close, leaving no room for thought, only fear. And then the beast appears. He drives them away, placing himself between Belle and the danger without hesitation. In that moment, he becomes the reason the fear stops. That matters more than we like to admit. Because fear, followed by safety, does something powerful to the nervous system. When the danger passes, the relief floods in, and the body remembers who made it stop. Belle brings him back to the castle, wounded and exhausted, and she stays with him. Not out of obligation, but because something inside her has already shifted. Fear has been replaced by relief, and relief can create attachment long before the mind understands what is happening. When the beast recovers, he does not punish Belle for trying to escape. Instead, he forgives her. This is often read as growth, as proof that he is changing. But forgiveness carries a quiet implication. It suggests that leaving was wrong, that wanting freedom required absolution. And Belle accepts this without resistance. Life inside the castle continues, and over time, the beast begins to soften around her. His voice lowers more often than it rises. He hesitates before speaking. He makes awkward, imperfect attempts at kindness. These moments are disarming. They invite empathy. They make him feel human rather than frightening. And Belle, who has always met the world with patience and emotional openness, responds naturally. This is where the story begins to feel warm. Then comes the library. He leads her into room after room filled with books, endless shelves, towering walls, stories waiting to be opened. For the first time since arriving at the castle, Belle lights up completely. This gift is not just generous, it is precise. It reaches straight into her inner world and mirrors it back to her. It says, "I see what matters to you." And in that moment, the castle feels less like a place of captivity and more like a place of understanding. But the structure underneath does not change. The castle is still not hers. The choice to stay was never fully hers. Her freedom remains conditional. Yet, emotionally, something has shifted, because kindness feels different when it arrives after fear. It feels larger, deeper, more meaningful than it might have in any other context. This is where many of us recognize the pattern. Not because we have lived in enchanted castles, but because we have lived in relationships where the worst moments came first and the softness followed after. Where relief was mistaken for intimacy. Where gratitude quietly replaced choice. This is not clinical Stockholm syndrome, but it is a familiar kind of bonding. One formed through survival, through contrast, through the deep human need for safety. Belle does not fall in love because she is naive. She falls in love because the environment teaches her to, because when kindness appears inside captivity, it shines brighter than it should. And this is where the story gently, almost invisibly, teaches us something dangerous. That love is proven by contrast, not by consistency. By the time Belle has been in the castle for a while, something subtle has already shifted, even if she herself cannot yet fully name it. What began as a personal choice, a sacrifice made out of love for her father, slowly turns into something larger than her own story. The castle is not empty. It never was. Long before Belle arrived, life inside those walls had already been shaped by waiting. The servants are not just background characters frozen in time. They are people who have been living under the same curse for years, watching the seasons pass, watching hope fade a little more each day as the petals of the rose fall one by one. The rose is often shown as a romantic symbol, something delicate and poetic, but in reality it represents something far heavier. It is a constant reminder that time is running out, that love must happen before it is too late, that failure has consequences. And when an entire environment lives under that kind of pressure, everyone inside it begins to look, consciously or unconsciously, for a way out. This is where Belle's role quietly changes. From the moment she arrives, the servants notice her presence, not just as a person, but as a possibility. They see how the beast softens around her, how the atmosphere in the castle shifts when she is near, how laughter and warmth begin to return to spaces that had long been cold. Their kindness toward her is genuine, their affection real, but it is also layered with something else: expectation. Belle is encouraged to stay close. Moments are created for her, dinners are arranged, conversations gently nudged along, dances orchestrated with hopeful smiles in the background. No one ever says it out loud, but the message is clear in the way they watch her, in the way they wait. You matter here. You change things. You might be the one. For someone like Belle, this is powerful. She has spent much of her life feeling unseen, misunderstood, out of place in a world that did not quite know what to do with her depth. And suddenly, here she is, not just seen, but essential. Her presence has impact. Her kindness has weight. Her patience seems to make everything better. This is where being chosen begins to blur into being needed. Being chosen feels intoxicating because it feels like worth. It feels like destiny, like meaning, like finally being significant in a way that is undeniable. But being needed carries a different kind of energy. It attaches value not just to who you are, but to what you can do for others. Inside the castle, Belle slowly becomes more than herself. She becomes the one who calms the beast, the one who brings light back into dark rooms, the one around whom hope quietly reorganizes itself. And while no one ever tells her that the future depends on her, the atmosphere does that work for them. This is how responsibility settles in without asking permission. Belle does not fall in love because she wants to save anyone. She falls in love because she is human, because she is kind, because she responds to tenderness when it finally appears. But layered beneath those feelings is the unspoken understanding that her staying matters, that her leaving would not just hurt one person, but many. The rose continues to lose its petals in the background, and with each one, the pressure grows. Love is no longer just connection. It is outcome. It is success or failure. It is whether or not everything can be fixed in time. And love that carries a deadline does not feel the same as love that is free. This is where many women recognize something painfully familiar, not in fairy tales, but in real relationships where they became the emotional center, the stabilizer, the hope holder, where they stayed not only because they loved, but because leaving felt like collapse. Being someone's hope can feel beautiful, but it is also heavy. Being essential to someone's healing can feel meaningful, but it can quietly erase your own freedom. And being afraid to step away because everything depends on you is not romance, even if it is wrapped in tenderness. This does not make Belle foolish, and it does not make her love unreal. It simply means her love exists inside a system that needs her to succeed. What this also means is that Belle's love does not grow in a vacuum, because while her feelings are forming naturally, the environment around her is not neutral. The servants are not simply watching a romance unfold, they are actively invested in its success. From the beginning, they understand something Belle does not yet fully see: that love is not just desired here, it is required. Breaking the curse was never a matter of chance. It had conditions. Love had to happen, and it had to happen in time. So when Belle arrived, kind and open and emotionally attuned, she was not just welcomed, she was positioned. This is the part of the story that is usually softened, even hidden. The dinners, the shared moments, the encouragement to spend time together, they are not random. They are intentional, guided, built around one goal: getting the beast to fall in love and to be loved in return. That does not mean the servants are cruel or calculating. They are desperate. They have been waiting for years, watching hope disappear petal by petal. And when Belle appears, she represents a chance they cannot afford to ignore. So, yes, feelings become real. Yes, the beast genuinely changes. Yes, Belle's love is sincere. But the beginning was not innocent. The connection grows inside a framework where success is measured by outcome, not by freedom. Belle is not asked whether she wants to carry this role. It is simply placed upon her gently enough that it almost feels like destiny instead of expectation. And this distinction matters because something can become real without having started on equal ground. When we look at the story this way, we can finally hold two truths at once. The love is real, and the situation was not fair. Both exist simultaneously. This is where Beauty and the Beast stops being just a fairy tale and starts becoming a mirror. Many women recognize this pattern not because they were manipulated, but because they were needed. Because they were good at understanding, at staying, at holding space when things were difficult, because love slowly turned into responsibility and leaving began to feel unthinkable. The lesson here is not that love should be distrusted. It is that love should never begin as a mission. You are not meant to be someone's solution. You are not meant to carry the pressure of saving a relationship, a person, or a future that was already unstable before you arrived. And being chosen should never come with the quiet fear that everything will fall apart if you stop trying. If there is one thing to take from this story, it is this: real love does not require you to fix, to heal, or to prove your worth through sacrifice. Real love grows where you are free to stay and free to leave. And that is the difference we were never taught to see. What we can learn from this story is not that love is dangerous or that kindness should be questioned. It is something quieter and far more useful than that. We learn that love feels different when it begins in freedom and when it begins under pressure. That affection can grow in many conditions, but not all of them are equal. And that being deeply needed can feel almost identical to being deeply loved, especially for women who are used to giving more than they receive. This story teaches us how easily responsibility can be mistaken for connection, how staying can be praised as devotion, even when it costs us choice, and how being the one can slowly turn into carrying something that was never meant to be ours alone. What Beauty and the Beast quietly shows us is that real love does not ask us to save anyone. It does not arrive with a countdown or with the weight of an entire future resting on our shoulders. It does not need us to be exceptional, patient, or endlessly understanding in order to be worthy. The most important lesson here is this: love should not begin with a task. You do not need to fix someone to be loved. You do not need to stay because everything depends on you. And you do not need to shrink yourself into the role of hope in order to be chosen. So the question this story leaves us with is not whether Belle loved the beast enough or whether the curse was finally broken. The real question is simpler and much closer to home. When you look at your own relationships, are you staying because you are freely choosing love, or because you feel needed, responsible, or afraid of what would happen if you left? And if love were truly free, what would it ask of you then? If anything in this story stirred something in you, know that you are not alone in that. Awareness is not meant to hurt you. It is meant to return you to yourself. Rest in the knowing that your worth does not come from saving, fixing, or enduring. You are allowed to choose love that feels safe, free, and mutual. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed drifting through this with me, you can follow or like Moonlit Diary. And if there's a film you'd like us to analyze next, let me know in the comments. Until next time, be gentle with your heart. Sweet dreams.